What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are going to talk through the Atlanta Falcons, a full team breakdown. The question we have here are the Atlanta Falcons Super Bowl contenders? And we'll get into that. We're going to look at their roster. We're going to look at their depth chart. We're going to look at their offseason. We're going to first talk about how their 2023 season went, though. That is a critical piece of this because there are a lot of changes here for the Falcons. The first thing, they were 7-10 last year. Their offense, with an offensive-minded head coach in Arthur Smith, 26th in points per game. Defense was 17th in points per game, so positive trend on that side of the ball. They fired Arthur Smith. They traded Desmond Ridder. They signed Kirk Cousins. They drafted Michael Penix, but we'll get to that later. Randy, what were your takes from the 2023 season? Obviously, not a lot of that pertains to anything that they're doing in 2024.
No, but it was for the last couple of years we saw a team that would fight, well coached, in the system. They just had nothing from the quarterback position. Wasn't consistently using the stars they were drafting, and so just a disappointment overall.
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. We all know, if you play fantasy football, that's probably why you follow this channel or subscribe to this channel. But we all know how Arthur Smith really he has a very creative offense that just used all the best players as decoys. I talked about it in a Drake London video, which you should go check out. But like this new offense is not going to do that. They're going to put their best players in positions to succeed. They did hire Zach Robinson, kind of an inexperienced play caller, but also coming from that Sean McVay tree, which is something that most NFL teams should consider doing with how McVay has been so multiple. We've seen him run two different sets of offenses. So to me, this was a really, really good offseason for the Falcons, particularly because the quarterback upgrade is massive. So obviously they brought in Kirk Cousins, but they really overhauled their entire wide receiver room. They brought in Darnell Mooney, Ray McLeod, Rondale Moore. They also added a couple of tight ends, Ross Dwelly, Charlie Warner. They got rid of Mac Hollins. They got rid of Van Jefferson. Calais Campbell's still out there. So, I don't think he's coming back to Atlanta because he doesn't really fit that timeline. But what were your takes on the roster moves this offseason?
Yeah, obviously, full sail trying to revamp this team for the future and win now at the same time. So you spend the money on Kirk Cousins to Darnell Mooney to revamp the offense, give you that second receiver you desperately need. Your O-line's already good. Your running back's great. Tight end's good. You added depth there to help out. It all really worked out. And then you also went a young route, but not a young route, drafting Michael Penix. And most of the defensive signings, obviously drafting, were all young. So it looked like a really conscious effort to let's get this offense up to par by spending the money on the veterans and let's retool the defense into the new image with all the draft picks. And I like a lot of the players they drafted, maybe not exactly where they were drafted, but even Michael Penix, we do like Michael Penix. Maybe not the best landing spot or draft position, but either way, it was a great offseason for them in terms of plus minus on the additions of the roster. They definitely are in the positive.
One of the main questions I'm going to have with this team, if they end up being, a playoff team that, looks close to a contender, which we'll talk about our record predictions here in a little bit as well. But if this team is close to contention with Michael Penix Jr. sitting on the bench and they just need like one more wide receiver to push them over the top, I'm really, really going to question that move to draft Michael Penix even more than I have. I do think when you sit with it, like it makes sense. Terry Fontenot really bought himself probably a few more years on his contract with that selection. Because I think now what we do is we say, okay, Kirk Cousins, we have him for 2 years, and then we are going to see what Michael Penix does because we drafted him. So I think that was a job saving move, to be completely honest, because he probably should have been on the chopping block too with all the skill positions in the top 10, which I think will work this year with a good offense.
If they're not picking at 8 again, I think they'll be pretty happy as long as it's a little deeper. But yeah, I mean, going into the draft, biggest questions: edge rusher, corner. That's the biggest red flag for me. Is you waited until very late day 3 and then very late day 2 and then day 3 to address those positions. Braylon Trice is very good for the third round, so that was a great pick. And Dorless there, but still, it's a little aggravating.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get into that side. But first, we're going to talk about the offense. So, offensive line, still a good group, returning all 5 starters this year. It was a good group. They move really well. So, if we go with a more zone heavy scheme, I think this is going to be a really good moving offensive line. I still have questions about the wide receivers, clearly. I think Darnell Mooney regressed pretty significantly, and I think some of that you can attribute to that Bears offense and what it was asking Justin Fields to do and what Justin Fields, sometimes failed to do. But Darnell Mooney was pretty bad when he got the ball as well. He was dropping a lot of passes, a lot of money to give to that type of guy, but I see the vision. Rondale Moore is your slot wide receiver. I think that's okay if Zach Robinson can really use him in a creative way. I think this is like the Tutu Atwell of this offense, but the problem is Tutu Atwell was like the wide receiver 4. There were times where he was the wide receiver 3 for that Rams offense, but I just think this maybe they're looking at Kyle Pitts as more of a weapon and more of a piece, as they should. But I still think that they just need one more weapon. Hopefully they line Bajan up as a wide receiver at times and kind of alleviates that because I think he can do that. But overall, this is like really, really good offense on paper.
Yeah, one of the best offensive lines. You have 3 elite top end draft picks and London, Pitts, and Robinson. If they're all used properly, Darnell Mooney could be a great complement to that. Randall Moore, if you're actually going to use him and he's not just running cardio and he's in a schemed offense for him, he should be really good. Hodge and McLeod have shown flashes of being able to, at least do something for your team. And you took an upside shot late at wide receiver. Hopefully that works out. But again, if this is a playoff contending team, you could be a buyer at the deadline for a veteran receiver to add to this core to really just boost you to that next level.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that's what the timeline is now, right? You've got Kirk Cousins for 2 to 3 years. I think you're looking to win a Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins. I sometimes question the logic behind that based on what we've seen, but I think obviously that's just a major upgrade from Desmond Ritter, who was just not good last year. Other side of the ball, so we still have questions here, but defensive front I think is good. I think the linebackers leave a little bit to be desired. Trey Anderson's pretty good. Caden Ellis is fine, but I think that they could have added a little bit more depth there. I do like their edge rushing options now. I think that with what they added, I mean, we didn't talk about it, but Bradley Anae coming in. I think that's a good rotational piece. Arnold Ebiketie, I think, will take another step forward in this defense this year. But you mentioned the secondary looks like a problem on paper. I think you've got Jesse Bates, you've got AJ Terrell, and then after that, there's a lot of question marks.
Question marks being the nice way to put it.
Right.
You made minor signings to this group, and you're hoping people that haven't really performed step up, like Richie Grant, even though he's currently not even starting with strong safety. So it's leaving a lot to be desired. You're asking a lot of this front 7 attack with a little bit athletic linebackers, but definitely one of the weaker linebacking cores, at least inside linebacking cores in the NFL. So you're asking a lot from these pass rushers to give. I mean, AJ Terrell, is he even going to get a ball thrown his way with the rest of these guys out here, especially if Bates is covering that side a little bit more too with the one over there? We're going to need a lot of people to step up in the secondary.
Yeah, I do think there's some upside with Clark Phillips. I think, we know what Clark Phillips is. He was really, really good. He's just a small boy. And so if you get a team with a couple of big wide receivers, I think this team could struggle to cover in that way. And while I do like the defensive front, I don't necessarily know that these guys are getting to the quarterback super quickly. I think really this run defense should be good. I think Grady Jarrett can penetrate. And hopefully that speeds things up to where the coverage only has to be this quick stuff. But in theory, if the pass rush doesn't land, they're in trouble on the back end, and you don't want to be in that position, especially when you're looking at winning a Super Bowl in this window, right?
Yeah. Well, indoor stadium track, you need good corners and that kind of thing. That's why a lot of the mocks were them taking a corner at 8 or an edge rusher at a corner in the second round. But they did get 2, interior pass rush D tackles / edges. So hopefully that could help.
Yeah. All right. Time for some schedule predictions. Then we'll get into my fantasy football stat projections as well before we get out of here. But I do want to mention so the early part of the schedule is actually pretty tough. I think we're going to know what this Falcons team is pretty quickly because Pittsburgh, really good defense. I think the offense is going to be pretty significantly improved as well. So you have really three tough games. I think New Orleans should be winnable, especially at home. Tampa Bay at home is going to be a tough game. Tampa Bay is the reigning division champs. And then it kind of eases up a little bit. You do get Tampa Bay twice in 4 weeks, so that could be tough. But overall, I have them finishing at 11-6 as the number 2 seed in the NFC. So I have them as a legitimate NFC contender because that back part of the schedule, man, the Vikings, Raiders, Giants, Commanders, Panthers, like they should end on a 5-game win streak in theory. Right?
How rude.
Sorry.
Coming
Las
off the
Vegas,
bye, it is a solid point. I mean, I again, like I have them 10-7 with the 4th seed in the NFC. I actually have them starting off real bad, like 1-4, and then getting back to 500, winning some big games, and then winning down the stretch. We're both over the betting lines of 9.5. It's obviously the heavy favorite being them hitting the over. They do have one of the easiest strength of schedule, depending on which metric you're using. One of those you might have the easiest. Plus 194 to make the playoffs, minus 120 to win the division, which obviously we both had, and plus 2,400 to win the Super Bowl, so the 11th best odds. And they're actually favored to win 13 out of 17 games currently, with 6 of those by 2.5 or less. So most people, but definitely me, count those as coin flips, anything under 3. So it's a weird schedule for sure. And you could panic quickly. And that's even with the losses I did early. I think a lot of people might panic on this whole situation, and we might be hearing a lot about medical panics coming in or something going into week 5, but I think they'd quell those little things off the bat. I do expect them to kind of struggle early, just with new quarterback, new coach, new scheme. But I think they get it right the ship, and they will be a true Super Bowl contender for me.
Yeah. I mean, especially the NFC got a lot better. And when I did the full record predictions, I was shocked at how many teams I had with winning records because last year, I think 9 wins got you into the playoffs. This year, I don't have a single 9-win team making the playoffs in the NFC because I have so many teams that got so much better. But I do think that so I have Atlanta squeaking out that week 1 against Pittsburgh, losing Philadelphia and Kansas City, but then kind of going on a little streak there. So I have them winning 4 in a row in the middle. I do have them losing to the Raiders for what it's worth, Randy. So
thank you. So do
so
I.
have
them I'm
horrible.
assuming, I have them flipped with losing the first games against New Orleans and Tampa and winning the other games against them. So
Gotcha.
50-50, who cares?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Splitting against the division should be expected, especially, I mean, I think there's a chance they sweep New Orleans for what it's worth this year.
There is.
But I think that's Panthers. Sorry, Panthers.
Yeah,
but,
they could easily go 5-1 in the division. I'm not going to argue that, but I do have them, I believe, 4-2 in the division. So
I think that's where I have them as well.
Maybe.
All right, let's get into
some good stuff. No, I did not.
All right, some stat projections for you. So these stat projections are available. The full stat projections for every NFL team are available on our Patreon, patreon.com/DevyReal. But I have Kirk Cousins as QB18. I know that's pretty low for Kirk Cousins. I have him being super efficient, though. This is just a case of a lot of really good young quarterbacks. I talked about it with the Kyler Murray one when we did this Arizona Cardinals preview as well. Bijan Robinson, 1,400 yards on the ground, 15 touchdowns. That seems a little crazy, but when you look at how a Zach Robinson-led offense should use their running backs, right? If we look at the Rams mold, Bijan Robinson could have this Todd Gurley-esque or Kyron Williams-esque type of usage this year. So I have him at nearly 2,000 yards and 19 touchdowns to be the RB2 because Christian McCaffrey still exists. Tyler Algier, I don't have being super relevant. I think you can plug him in here and there for fantasy football, but I'm not super interested in that. Nice injury replacement, but I won't be drafting that person. Drake London, wide receiver 4 overall. I did a whole breakdown on that. Make sure you go check that video out. And then Kyle Pitts, the other one, tight end 5, over 1,000 yards, 81 receptions, 8 touchdowns. So overall on offense, like I think this is a very, very lucrative offense to target for fantasy football. And I think that this team is going to score a lot of points, clearly, with that's what 45, 49 touchdowns just between Cousins and the 2 running backs. So
Yeah, I think everyone's first question would be, how do you have top 5 running back, wide receiver, and tight end at a top 18 quarterback? It's usually those do coincide, but Bijan being an absolute god on the ground would obviously take away some of the touchdowns from Kirk Cousins. And again, quarterback in a new system coming off an Achilles injury, I think you in these would also be predicting a bit of a slow start. I think that's very fair and almost expected. If he doesn't do that, good on him. But even with a solid all around, I don't think he hits 5,000 yards. I think you're correct on that. There's just not enough wide receiver talent in this room. I do think they are going to lean on Bijan. So I'm perfectly happy with all of these. Drake London, I think, is a bit high, but Kirk Cousins has always had a top-end wide receiver with his quarterback play. He usually targets somebody. He loves the tight end position. He loves the dump offs, and he loves to target his ace. I think all these make complete sense. You would hope Darnell Mooney could do a bit more, especially with the rest of the receivers he's competed against. But this tells me pick the studs for this team and move on. Don't pick any upside plays. Just pick the studs and move on.
Yeah, that was kind of the idea, right? Is like this team has failed to filter targets and touches to their best players, and now we're going to go in the extreme direction where we say, I mean, we look at the Rams offense last year. Puka Nacua was getting like 15 targets a game at one point as a rookie. And so you look at Drake London, I think Drake London is more talented than Puka Nacua. I just think they're going to filter targets through him. And you look at Kirk Cousins and what he likes to throw. Justin Jefferson is your prime example, of course, where he, a lot of dig routes, which Drake London kills on. I did a little bit of a film breakdown for it as well. And this is such a perfect match between Kirk Cousins and Drake London, and really Kyle Pitts too, as long as they utilize Pitts in good ways. So overall, good offense. Good offense.
It should be.
A lot of touchdowns, hopefully.
Yeah, and Kirk Cousins has always been, offenses, it feels like, that are shooting for 24 plus points a game. This is no different. You're in a dome again. This should all be full send. And thank God we actually have a coach that might use Bijan.
Yeah, that would be nice. All right, we're going to get out of here. But first, I want to mention we do have our Patreon, patreon.com/Devy. I just mentioned it, but we have our Devy guide over there. We have combined rankings. We're going to have some videos on that coming up soon, but we've got a ton of stuff. Check us out on Twitter as well, just at the Devy Royale. We just posted a screenshot of everything that you would get for $5 a month. So try to check that out. If you like this video, make sure you leave a comment, like it, subscribe to the channel, all the things. If you're a Falcons fan, tell us where we went wrong. Do you think your secondary is good? Do you think Darnell Mooney is going to be a little bit better than I think he's going to be? Let us know what you think. Otherwise, we're going to continue this series and go from there. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. A ton of good stuff. Kevin's done a ton of Devy stuff. So make sure you check all that out. Thank you guys for watching.